Orale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFP podcast. This is your host, Jorge Martin. Familia, it's the NFL Insider Series. I'm having a ball doing this, and we're going to duuuval today. So that was not intended, but it turned out pretty cool anyway. Hey, but I also want to make sure you're going to YouTube, you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you give us a like and a subscribe. Hit that subscriber button, por favor. Give us that thumbs up. You know what? Our numbers have almost doubled when it's just because of this NFL Insider Series. And I know that we're going to get some subscribers on this one because this was one of the most popular episodes last year. And it's not because of me, but it's because of this guy. So, one of the authorities. So I'm going to jump into him in a second. But first off, I want to make sure if you're going to underdogfantasy.com, when you go to Underdog, use that promo code Familia23. You're gonna get matched the first $100. So you put in $100, they're going to match you an extra $100 to play best ball. Get those drafts in because this is when it gets hot. It gets caliente. Summer temperatures go up, and so does the number of people who playing best ball on Underdog. So Familia 23. And like I said, Familia, this has been three-time guest, our invitado on this one. I mean, John Shipley, he's with Jaguar Report. They're under the Fan Nation, under Sports Illustrated, one of the authorities when it comes to all things Jaguars. And like we were saying right before got on camera, thankfully it's kind of like things are a little normal this year, and going into the 2023 season, a lot of big expectations. So let's welcome him in. John Shipley, bienvenido. Thank you for joining us.
No, thanks for having me on. And yeah, normal is really not normal around Jacksonville. So it's a nice little change up.
Oh man, well, there's no change up going on because Trevor Lawrence took a step last year, threw for over 4,000 yards, just was also a threat in the running game. Does he have another step this year in him for the 2023 season?
I think he absolutely does. I think when you look back in a few years at the development of Trevor Lawrence, that for as impressive as the 2022 season was, and as impressive as that ascension was after a tough rookie year, I think it's still going to be one of like the really least productive years of his career. I just think there's so much untapped potential there still that you really saw him hit his stride from week 9 on, after that London loss against the Denver Broncos, where he had a really bad goal line interception. He had one in a loss against the Houston Texans just a few weeks before that. And he has since said that it was after that game that he, basically told himself that he had to turn things around. And then obviously from week 9 on, he was one of the most, not just productive quarterbacks in the league, but one of the most efficient quarterbacks, very few turnovers, a lot of big plays. And of course, he was really an extension of Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson, the great thing about Lawrence is he'll take his shots, but he can also be, very much in that kind of robotic pocket passer kind of prototype that people think of, the Andrew Luck type mold, where you give him anything and he can accomplish it. So I do think that there's more, for Trevor to go. You just look at his numbers last year, and for as good as they were, his numbers, they were better in the first 2 months than they were his rookie year, but they weren't great. So now you just consider, okay, he won't spend the first 2 months of the season kind of figuring things out. He'll be able to hit it on a much faster start than last year.
And how do you see the schedule shaking out for him as far as with the opponents that they're? I mean, there could be some shootouts in there, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they play the AFC South and the NFC South. And just in terms of fierce defenses, there's not many in there. There's some teams that have thrown a lot of money towards the defense in those divisions. Obviously, the Atlanta Falcons are hoping to figure things out, but overall, they don't play many top-tier defenses this season. And most of their toughest games against, the best opponents, against the Baltimore Ravens, Cincinnati Bengals, Kansas City Chiefs, those are all games at home. So it's, it's not like they're having to go on the road and play some great defense at a deafening stadium or anything like that.
And, I feel like he's going to be a sneaky threat in the running game a little bit because, he got 5 touchdowns last year and he's got that 6'6" frame. I don't see him doing tush pushes, but I see him a lot of times pushing, kind of putting the ball over the goal line at, on the 1 yard line. Do you think we're going to see a few of those this year?
Yeah, he really isn't like, you see some physical, plays from him. Like, there's a play in the second half of their playoff loss to the Kansas City Chiefs where he lowered his shoulder, on a scramble and really, just kind of trucked. I believe it was a defensive back, and it was an incredibly physical play. But he's not overall like a physical player who's going to, get it out and grind it out in the running game or, the tush-push stuff like that. So I do think you'll see him, kind of vulture some touchdowns here and there, just because, like you said, I mean, he's 6'6", just his reach overall. If you can get to the 1 yard line, he's basically an instant touchdown. So I really think, that depending on how the short yardage running game goes, it got to the point last year where, they were on, first and goal, that sometimes the best option was to just try to have Trevor leap it over instead of going to a guy like Etienne, just largely because of the offensive line struggles. The short yardage game just wasn't there last year.
Well, you know what? Let's go over to the running backs real quick, because Travis Etienne had a good year, but didn't. And I've heard you on other podcasts talking about how there may have been unrealistic expectations for him to be a big time pass catching threat. I think there was talk of him being a receiver, talk of him being an Alvin Kamara type. Now, so he was a very good runner, but what are we seeing from him, as well as the competition from rookie Tank Bigsby and maybe others in the running back room?
Yeah, no, I do think that Etienne is somebody who, it's kind of wild to think about. He had over 1,400 yards from scrimmage last year, had some of the more, the highest explosive rate of any, running back, just in terms of explosive runs. But it really feels like when you ask the Jaguars, like, they think, kind of like Trevor Lawrence said, okay, yeah, he had a good year, but he can be a lot better than that. And that, it really was in a lot of ways his rookie season. So I do think, like anybody, obviously, when you invest a third-round pick in a running back, that says something. But I don't think he's going to be a threat to Etienne as the team's, primary running back during the 2023 season. All just because I do think that they can get another type of gear of production out of Etienne. And you mentioned passing game. Like, I do think Urban Meyer, calling him a slash player, put unrealistic expectations on him coming out of Clemson. You look at his Clemson numbers as a pass catcher, they improved his senior season, but it was mostly screen yards. He even said himself coming out of Clemson that the only routes he ran at Clemson were screens and checkdowns. He wasn't somebody who was going to enter the NFL as a big pass catcher. And then you look at Doug Peterson's offense in general, and just the offense doesn't really emphasize throwing the ball to the running back. I mean, you look at Andy Reid's offenses, they're the same way. They'd rather just distribute the ball to the other skilled positions. So it's kind of the perfect storm for him not to make a big impact as a pass catcher. But I do think that's one area the Jaguars think, on top of being more efficient as a runner, that he has the potential to kind of be much better at. But with that said, I do think there are opportunities for Tank Bigsby there, just in the fact that, like I said, the Jaguars struggled as a short yardage team last year. And I think just from covering Doug Peterson last year, if the Jaguars come out the first month of the season and, Etienne is struggling out a short yardage back, I don't think Peterson would wait very long to turn to a guy like Bigsby to try to find a solution.
Oh, man. Well, there's a solution that may have come, an additional solution that may have come in the form of a trade over the offseason. You got Calvin Ridley coming to the Jaguars, and adding to Christian Kirk, who had himself an excellent season, Zay Jones, who had a really good season. How do you see Calvin Ridley? The hype is already real in the fantasy community right now. In underdog drafts, he's going off pretty high. I mean, I'm in the third round. Let me see. I'm looking at him right now. He's going off as number 32 overall, so going right there in the third round. So people are buying in. Any worry about the layoff?
I personally don't think so. I thought he had a great offseason. I mean, just from I didn't think when Kirk and Zay Jones came last offseason, my first impressions of them wasn't as strong as they were for Ridley. And, maybe there's some pre-bias in there in the fact that I considered Ridley and his time with the Falcons as a higher level of player than those two guys were when they signed. But like you said, he did almost 2 years away from football. That's considerable. And that's also a big reason why, for as much positive hype as there is for Ridley inside Jacksonville right now, they still haven't really let him go like full, pedal to the, foot on the gas pedal yet, because of, like you said, 2 years out of football. if you let him just go, 100 miles per hour from his first practice, he's bound to re-injure himself. So they are being a little bit conservative with him right now. But I think as you get along in the dog days of training camp, you'll start hearing more stories about how he's kind of separating himself among the receivers. But with that said, it was a big thing with Lawrence last year that you could see it took him, later in the season, his connection with Christian Kirk, his connection with him was solid all season. But later in the season, you could just tell they were, on the same page. And that takes practice reps and that takes being around each other. And now, Kirk and Lawrence are so accustomed to each other. I don't expect Kirk's role really to change much. I don't expect him to see, many fewer targets. Maybe he sees a slight drop, but I really don't think significantly. And I really think the guy who sees fewer targets is probably Zay Jones, just in the fact that, Ridley will come in and replace Marvin Jones as, their starting outside receiver. Zay Jones saw, over 100 targets last year. I don't think that happens again, but I do think that just the style the Jaguars play offense, the way Doug Peterson is a play caller, and the way Trevor Lawrence is, that they'll have different receivers kind of be the primary receiver each week. And they're going to be, I'd imagine, for fantasy guys, maybe a frustrating team because one week you'll see Ridley go off. And then the next week, it was like last year, Zay Jones had a random 3-touchdown game against the Ravens. And you're like, that comes, out of nowhere.
I know I sat him that week too, and I was so toasty. I mean, could this offense be prolific enough that if get full healthy seasons from a Ridley and a Kirk, we could be seeing a pair of 1,000-yard receivers?
I think so. I really do. I mean, Doug Peterson, he wants to throw the ball. There were a lot of times last year where it was obvious that he wanted Trevor Lawrence to throw it, 40, 45 times a game. And that was when you had a, past his prime, Marvin Jones, starting there. Even with him starting out there were times Trevor Lawrence was just airing it out all game. And I expect that to be the same this year because, Doug Peterson, you can see as a play caller that he was a former quarterback. He wants the quarterback to kind of shine. He wants him to be the star of the show. And with Trevor Lawrence, you match his skill set. I do think that they had the potential to have both those guys be 1,000-yard receivers. I mean, last year alone, 3 different pass catchers had career years with the Jaguars, and that's wild to see on one team. Just 3 different guys produce like that. So I think you can see it again this year.
Oh yeah, I'm pumped about this one. When you talk about a quarterback being a star, who better to who looks the part more than the guy I love to call Fabio Football. Thank you to my cousin Primo Nico for coming up with that name. But yeah, with the hair and everything like that, nobody looks better. And I'm going to give you big credit because you were the first person last year to, even though you knew that there could be bows and arrows coming at you, with about Evan Engram looking great in camp. And I think you even said, it's like, I know, but he looks great in camp. That went into the season, came back. He's coming back for another year because he got, it's a 1-year deal. Could he be, we be looking at him selling out again for another big season for him?
I think he's another guy like Kirk that he just has a great relationship with Lawrence, not just their on-field chemistry, but off-field. And I think that factors into it. Like, Lawrence knows that he can trust Ingram as a target. The respect that the Jaguars, as a locker room, as a coach staff has for Ingram, that's a tangible thing that goes a long way. So he's going to see his targets. He's going to play a lot. And he's a perfect, everybody talks about Doug Peterson as, a good tight ends coach, but nobody ever really mentions why. The reason why Ingram is so perfect for the Jaguars is Peterson allows him to win horizontally instead of just vertically. He allows him to get the ball in space and just use his athleticism and his strength and power to get by guys. And he also allows him to get a lot of one-on-one matchups and, be able to read the leverage of defenders, run option routes, stuff like that. And those passes really up the seam are some of the things that Trevor Lawrence does best. So, I really think Ingram and Peterson are kind of a match made in heaven. And I think Ingram, similar numbers to what he did last year is what I would expect.
No, awesome. Is there anybody we missed on the offense that may contribute? Or
Jamal Agnew, I think will see his design touches here and there. He had a crazy rate of snap to touch ratio last year, where he barely played on offense, but it seemed like every time he was on the field, he would play 6 snaps in a game and he would have 5 touches in the game. He was almost always getting the ball. He'll get design touches in the red zone specifically, just because he's such a hard guy to cover one-on-one with his quickness, that he'll be the occasional guy to pop off for a touchdown. But Otherwise, not really. I don't think Brendan Strange, the second round tight end, is going to see a lot of looks in the passing game as a rookie. I think he'll play some, but primarily as a blocker. I think Luke Farrell will honestly see their second most looks among the tight end room. And then, a deep sleeper name would be Garrett Prince, second-year guy, was an undrafted free agent last year. He would, I think, is probably a lock to make the roster, and they're really high on him, but he's not a name that you'll hear out there very much.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned run blocking, and you got to keep you got to keep Fabio football upright. You got to open holes for Etienne and company. The offensive line obviously lost one of its key players from last season. Ranked number 26. Added Anton Robinson in the draft. How does that group kind of shake out right now? Shape up.
Yeah. No, I mean, Juwan Taylor was definitely a loss in the fact that he was arguably the best pass protector last year. Not a strong run blocker, but really good pass protector. Really young, really athletic, good locker room guy. But the thing is, Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence are able to make an offensive line look a little bit better than maybe they are. Lawrence has one of the best, sack percentage rates of any starting quarterback in the last 2 seasons. And sacks to me are truly a quarterback stat. So the fact that he's been sacked so little over the last 2 years, despite some high pressure rates, shows that he can help an offensive line kind of mask some weaknesses. So I do think that him and Doug Peterson's ability to just generate a quick passing game can kind of, blind some of those spots. But I also think, when you look at the Jaguars offensive line, Cam Robinson, we broke the story in April about his suspension. It came out recently that it's a 4-game suspension. So for the first month, they won't have their highest paid lineman, but in his place, they'll have a second-round pick from a few years ago who, were it not for COVID and an ACL injury, Walker Little probably would have been a top 10 pick in the 2021 draft. He was like a megastar recruit coming out of high school, and he was terrific at Stanford. Just, really bad circumstances ended up pushing him to the second round, but he stepped in Cam Robinson's place for the last 5 games last year, and the offense, didn't have any drop-off at all. And then our right tackle, obviously, losing Taylor was notable, but they're replacing him with a first-round pick. So it's not like they're a team that, they're throwing 2 day 3 guys or a journeyman veteran out there and praying they can get by. Like, yeah, they have some inexperience there, but it's 2 premium picks and investments in young guys who they're young and inexperienced, but they are talented.
Oh, that's good to see. That's good to see. I mean, because you need that offense does not become high powered if not for him. If not for those guys up front. The other side of the ball, kind of a mixed bag last year. It was a team that was gave up that was number 28 in passing yards allowed, over 4,000 passing yards allowed, but was down was 12th in total rushing yards allowed. So fairly good against the run. How are they shaping up this year versus the pass versus the run? And because you already touched on the fact that we could be seeing some shootouts.
I think they're going to be strong against the run again this year, just because, they have a couple of really strong run defenders, and Josh Allen's one of the better run defending edges. Foye Oluokun is, one of the better run stopping off-ball linebackers. Devon Hamilton, Roy Robinson-Harris, Foley Fatukasi, and then even a depth, Adam Gotsis. They drafted a run stopper in Tyler Lace in the 4th round. So they have run stoppers. The question is really the pass rush and the pass coverage. Last year, I believe they were 4th or 5th in the NFL in pressure rate last year, but they were number 26 in sacks just because, and their defensive line coach, Brinson Buckner, said after the offseason this year that they missed, I think it was upwards of 25 sacks that, they could have potentially had, but that they just didn't finish. So the big thing this year is, one, can you finish better than you did last year? Josh Allen especially, he got the pressures, he got the hurries, but he didn't get the sacks. And then 2, can they replace Arden Key, who, he only had 4.5 sacks, but when he signed with the Tennessee Titans, they lost their most efficient pass rusher just in terms of pure pressure rate and ability to, get home. He's also an inside and outside guy. And then the secondary, they have some solid players, and Tyson Campbell's a really good outside corner. He's probably one of the more underrated defenders in the NFL. Darius Williams, he's a good veteran who, they didn't really have outside until probably the last quarter or so of the season. And then they put him outside and realized, this guy is much more comfortable on the outside than he was in the slot. Some reporters said that was the case when they signed him to be the slot corner in the offseason, but, that's nor here nor there. And it really felt like by the end of the year, they figured out which spots were the right for their guys. So this year there won't be as much of a learning curve. But really, a lot of it comes down to, can Devin Lloyd and Trayvon Walker play better? And each had strong off seasons. Obviously, the coaches are optimistic about them, but Devin Lloyd, after a strong opening month of the season, he was just picked on consistently in the passing game by coordinators. And then Trayvon Walker, I still think they misused him last year. He's not a stand-up 3-4 outside linebacker who you can just put in a wide alignment and tell him to rush from a 2-point stance all game. He's a pure defensive lineman. Slide him more inside, put his hand more in the dirt, and they've shown a willingness to do so. But again, the production has to be there eventually.
Oh man, mi amigo, this is awesome. You gave me the whole overview real quick. I mean, I guess it really makes a difference not having a coaching change and just kind of having things fairly normal.
No, it does, because I mean, you could see their starting defense from week 1 to what they put out there in the playoffs against the Chiefs. It was very different because they had to figure out who is best in what spots. I mean, from Darius Williams went from the slot to the outside. Trey Herndon's now in the slot. They even moved some defensive linemen around. Foley Fatukasi plays more nose now. Devon Hamilton plays more 3-4 defensive end. And, they believe that they have some ascending players in Tyson Campbell. Andre Cisco, somebody who the staff thinks can legitimately have a Pro Bowl season based on, last year he had some good turnover numbers, but you ask any of their defensive coaches and they say, well, if he caught 3 or 4 interceptions he should have had, he would have been even better. So those are 2 guys they think can have really good seasons. So there's some talent there, but there's also some question marks.
Oh man, well, there's no question marks about your analysis, mi amigo. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Duuuval, I came to the source for this one, so I knew you'd be. I hope you all come out in force like you did last year when you watch this. Mi amigo John, one last thing. We always talk a little Mexican food at the end of this one. Any recent discoveries or any favorite takes of late?
Yeah, there's a place a couple blocks from where me and my fiance live called Nos Manches. That I'm probably butchering it, but they have just terrific, fajitas, burritos, empanadas. It's absolutely fantastic.
Hook John and his fiance up. Nos Manches, come on, hook them up. You got them taken care of. They just give you an endorsement right now. So, and a little nice fajita dinner and some margaritas or little cervezas. You bring it home. Oh, mi amigo. Okay, well, training camp starting in a few weeks. But I know you're not resting up. What? Give us a preview on maybe what's coming up and maybe a little bit what's coming up during training camp.
Yeah, no, we'll have something out on, I talked to each of the Jaguars assistant coaches on, their position coaches on what they've seen out of their rookie draft picks so far, because, the head coach and general manager, obviously they've said what they saw out of these guys to draft them, but the position coaches are the guys who are with these guys every single day and can really track their progress from day 1 to, the regular season. So we already have stories on Anton Harrison and Brendan Strange and what their position coaches are seeing from them. This week we'll have something on Tank Bigsby as well.
Oh, fantastic. It's awesome. Yeah. Go to jaguarreport.com, Familia. They're right there, but also make sure to give my man a follow. I'm going to let you, for the audio audience, to talk about your unique Twitter handle.
Oh yeah, no, it is @_John_Shipley. There's a John Shipley who covers Minnesota sports who's been doing it for about 50 years. So he kind of beat me to the punch.
Oh yeah.
It happens.
It happens when you start doing things that long ago, and
exactly.
If it's before you were born, you're kind of like
he earned it.
Oh, awesome. Well, mi amigo, thank you again, and once again, Familia, make sure you're giving us a like and subscribe on YouTube. Give us a follow. We've got so much great content coming out. Going to have Beyond the NFL Insider Series. Going to have some great guests coming up that we're just going to be chopping it up all the way till kickoff. And then me, I'm going to keep bringing it to you on every week for during the NFL season. So keep set those notifications. Get ready for plenty of great content on Familia FFB. And actually, everything's on a playlist right now. So, if you missed one of these NFL insiders, they're all lined up, just nicely for you. Also, make sure to go to underdog.com, underdogfantasy.com. Use that promo code Familia23. You're going to get matched up to the first $100. You can find me at Jorge Martin 17 on Twitter. Everywhere else, you go Familia FFB. Also, make sure if you want this on audio, we're on Anchor. Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Muchas gracias to the folks at Spotify for podcasters for getting us out there. Again, muchas gracias to John for joining us. Muchas gracias to you for following along. Keep checking in for more NFL Insider Series, and always remember, todos somos familia. Salud.